this Tuesday morning after a long weekend. Why couldn't it have been like this, J-Dog, yesterday and Saturday? Sunny, sunshine, abundant sunshine today and tomorrow in the 80s. Here we go. Yeah, well, better late than never. But again, Memorial Day, hope you took a moment to remember the meaning and enjoy the longer weekend. Hey, Google, hey, Alexa, worldwide, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. And big event down in Texas today in the U.S. Senate side of things. And Paul Steinhaus, our own Paul Steinhaus, well, not our own. He's Fox National, Fox News, Fox Digital. But good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H, a contributor as well here, the Pulse of an H. Paul, good morning from Texas.
Good morning. Yeah, I'd like to think I'm part of the family there, Jack. So I appreciate that. Thanks. We've been talking for years.
Yep.
Yes, showdown day. It's Tuesday, which means, another round of elections, primary elections. This time, as you said, down here in Texas, these are the runoffs, Jack. They had the primary back in early March, but today is the runoff because down here in Texas, you got to top 50% to win your primary. And, Jack, this is a doozy. This is John Cornyn, the longtime Republican senator, Ken Paxton, the MAGA firebrand. He is the state attorney general down here. And just 1 week ago, Paxton was endorsed by President Donald Trump.
Right.
We know how huge those endorsements are. Jack, this has been an expensive, bitter, nasty campaign. It all ends today with Trump backing Paxton.
But, Paul, it's interesting because you have an attorney general in the state of Texas, I would think, pretty well known. I mean, you look at a state like New Hampshire, I don't know. New Hampshire's a smaller physical state in population, but an attorney general like in Florida, big state, Texas, and a U.S. senator. So these are, but President Trump is weighing in here. And we know that in recent primaries, just as the last week or two, it's been effective. What are the poll? I'm not sure I believe them, but what is the buzz there? Who has an advantage here? Did the surveys and polls going into this show a clear? I think the polls are open now, Paul. You're in Texas, so they show a clear favorite.
Yeah, the public opinion polls about a week ago showed Paxton with the slight edge over Cornyn, and then of course Trump makes the endorsement, which you would think, listen, his endorsements are hugely influential in Republican primaries. So you would think today Paxton is the favorite in this face-off. But, listen, anything can happen. So stay tuned. The polls here close around 7 o'clock local time, 8 o'clock Eastern. And, Jack, this is another test of the Trump clout over the Republican Party and another test of his endorsement power. And he has been passing those tests with flying colors. As you said, we saw Massey go down in Kentucky. I was there a week and a half ago. We saw Senator Cassidy go down in Louisiana. And go back about 3 weeks, you had those 5 state senators in Indiana who defied Trump on redistricting, and they were defeated. So, this is Donald Trump's party, plain and simple.
And, Democrats are looking here in New Hampshire, that U.S. Senate race in the general for the midterms, and they're looking at Texas. Now, Texas, it's been a while since Democrats have won a statewide federal race, right?
It's been, the last time the Democrats won a statewide federal race, 1988, Jack. Last time they won any race in Texas statewide was 1994. It's been a long, long time. But Democrats are excited because they think if Paxton wins tonight, they got a really good shot, they think, at flipping this seat because Paxton has a lot of baggage. Let's be honest. He's gone through scandals. He was impeached by the Republican-dominated State House of Representatives back in 2023. The state Senate did acquit him, though. He was cleared of the charges. But he's being divorced right now by his wife, Jack, on, quote, biblical grounds. So he's facing a lot of baggage. Democrats think that James Tallarico, their up-and-comer, can maybe take on Paxton in the general. Democrats have gotten their hearts broken here.
Doesn't seem to matter anymore. Look at Graham Plattner up in Maine. You could say and do anything, and no one cares. All right, thank you, Paul.
Have a great day, Jack.
All right, so that's live out of Texas. Big one today. All right, we are streaming to you as well on YouTube if you want to watch the Pulse of an H. Our poll question up on X this morning, J-Dog, at the Pulse of an H. J-Dog and I were talking before our broadcast, and thank you for joining us this morning. Live, local, regional, national, worldwide. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H. But our poll question this morning on X at the Pulse of an H, are you going to be, J-Dog, I don't know if you did it, not interested or into it. I'd like to know, are you planning to go to any of the 7 matches, the World Cup soccer matches that start in just a few weeks at Gillette, which will be called Boston Stadium, even though it's 30 miles from Boston, home of the Patriots for these matchups.
The Revolution, don't forget that.
The Revolution, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's right, because of soccer. But 7, are you going to be going to any of these games or matches? Yes or no? That's up. J-Dog, poll question results from Friday?
Will New Hampshire have an income tax within 5 years? 100% no.
Thank goodness. No, I appreciate it. J-Dog and I were talking just for a moment before we tell you about the latest in the Middle East, and I will tell you the latest so I don't lose track here. U.S. Carrying out what they call self-defense strikes against some of the Iranian missile and boat-type launch sites and some of the mines that they've been placing in the Strait of Hormuz, kind of a defensive, but I don't care what you call it. This is interesting. They're trying to get an agreement with the Islamic State, and here we go. I don't know how you bomb a foe's targets and call it defensive, but I'm all for taking out, by the way, the Iranian targets that have been disrupting a flow of tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz. That's not my point, but I don't know how you call it. I love the terming. I love the terminology. A defensive strike is we're trying to strike a final peace agreement with Iran. I have no idea where this thing goes at this point. I don't think you do, right? I don't think any of us do. All I know is it is costing, and it's by the way, the fuel prices that we hear about, are up, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I will point out that in 2022, at this time of year, June 2022, I'll repeat that, June 2022, the price of gas per gallon was $5, almost $5 per gallon. And it is too high right now because it's affecting food prices, grocery prices, trucking prices, jet fuel prices across the board. Just about everything is expensive. That's not my point. But speaking of expensive, we'll come back to the latest on the Middle East. J-Dog and I were talking about the World Cup soccer matches. I guess there are going to be 7 of them starting I think it's June 13th through July 9th. J-Dog, I was going through the numbers early this morning to tell you how my mind thinks. So say, J-Dog, you or, just say a couple of people want to go to the Iraq-Norway game, which I think is the second match, Iraq-Norway. First of all, they're calling it Boston Stadium, not Gillette in Foxborough, because they're calling the home city, the cities, even though it's 30 miles from Boston. The premium seats down below, J-Dog, and they wonder why, by the way, sales are lackluster a few weeks to go. Maybe this is why. Premium seating, J-Dog, where you can actually see the players and the ball, are about $1,000, upwards of $1,000 per seat. If you're going to drive a vehicle there, a standard vehicle to park is close to $200 for the day or night, whatever time the match is. If you're going to get an adult beverage, but this isn't new to anything at Gillette, probably, $15 to $20 per cold beer or pint. Not to mention food. J-Dog, if you're going to you always go when you go to Cleveland to your matches. If you're going to get an official.
In Cleveland, I go to games.
What'd you say?
I go to games in Cleveland, not matches.
Oh, okay. Well,
soccer's a match.
You got me going on matches. When you go to events like games in Cleveland,
and basketball. When I go to games,
you get a jersey or a hat, right?
I don't do that.
Well, you got me one once.
I was going to the gift shop because you kept begging me, please,
give me a hockey hat, AHL hockey hat.
Must be $9 to go to an AHL hockey game, Jack. $9 to
go
to
an listen,
AHL hockey game.
When you get an official World Cup soccer jersey at one of these games, it's going to be about $125 to $150 per. If you get the official game jersey, it's almost $400 of one of the teams. Okay, I'm not done. If you're going to stay in a hotel in and around Foxborough, they're, of course, jacking up the rate, $600 to $1,000 per night. I think I mentioned parking, $175 to $200 per standardized vehicle.
Did, yeah.
Okay. So if you're going to go with 2 people, you're about $5,000 for a soccer match. And things are kind of expensive right now. Do you think that has anything to do with why more people aren't buying tickets, J-Dog?
Once private equity took over, it was over, because this isn't just happening in the World Cup. It's happening everywhere. Even bad teams in baseball are just jacking up the ticket prices. The Los Angeles Angels are the worst team in baseball right now. You can't get a comparable ticket right now. Even on second market value, you've got to wait till the day of to get something quasi-respectable. So
really?
once private equity took over, it was over. They're pricing the ordinary fan out, and they know that. But you know what the problem with that is? If you do that to the point where you have the World Cup, the biggest stage going in the world, you're going to see a really bad look of a lot of empty seats,
Yeah,
lack of interest, and they're going to have to come to the point where, you know what? Maybe we're going to have to bring the prices down a little bit more come 2030.
Well, the other thing, J-Dog, is there's, I think, about 68,000 when that Gillette is sold out for like a Patriots game. It's about 68,000. And if you get a third of that, I've been in that stadium, by the way, when we used to do the this show here at the Pulse in the afternoon, and we were down at Patriots, the summer training camp, and they had a little, like a, what do you call it? Little practice inside the stadium for locals. And we went and sat there, and it was about just the lower bowl. They invited season ticket holders, and I'm sitting down there when we were staying over for the camp, and I'm looking around, and J-Dog, the place seemed empty with like 5 or 10,000 people in it. So it's going to be pretty apparent if they are not selling tickets. All right. We'll fill in on some of the other news talk coming out of the long weekend. Hey, Google. Hey, Alexa, play the Pulse of an H. Jack Heath, J-Dog on the boards. Back in a moment.
Registration is now open for the Pulse of New Hampshire's
Paving. Good morning, New Hampshire, live from the New England College Studios. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right. Hey, it's we're getting in the final days here of May, J-Dog, before we get into June, and a lot of people are reacting to higher fuel costs locally. That's been a steady thing. And we have a good interview coming up here in a little bit. One of our economic thinkers, and we did just have on one of the great Taylor Bowley of Bank of America's Institute. They study like 70 million customer client data, like in terms of their spending. They're not the personal, like their information, but like their, like how many, people that have credit cards with Bank of America, people that have business accounts, loans, spending accounts, 70 million. They're looking at the numbers of what people are spending to see if they're cutting back or not. And we continue to see this dichotomy, and we're going to have Doug Tengden on, World Market Advisors, in a moment coming up. We see this split. It's kind of weird. I mean, I hear this morning with even talk that, the U.S., our military carried out strikes against Iranian targets, whether it was because of the Strait of Hormuz, the lanes there, the mines they're trying to put in, the boats, whatever, the striking Iranian targets and launch sites, missile launch sites. That's all fine and good. That's not my point, but this thing drags on, and I don't know when we're going to see it end, and it is causing a disturbance in the world in terms of oil, gas, and the flow of things, if you will. And it's not so much here in New England, but you look at parts of Europe and Asia and China that relies on oil out of there, and it's disruptive. This war with Iran has disrupted the global flow of things, which does affect the global economy in ways that we're trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out here at home, and I mean this, what the impact is on things like real estate, consumer decisions, spending, trips, planning a vacation, booking flights. You're thinking of selling your home. You're waiting for interest rates to come down. At this rate, with the cost of everything up a little bit, not a little bit, inflation is getting closer to 4% than 3%. Interest rates in the sixes, in some cases mid to upper. I don't know. I don't think we're likely to see a 0.25% interest rate reduction, but I'm not the new Fed chair or the Federal Reserve Board. I just think that when uncertainty is looming and the prices are high, that they don't really knock, especially the inflationary pressure, they don't lower rates. So people waiting to sell a home, buy a home, make an offer. I just think that things are kind of holding. It doesn't mean that you're seeing price reductions locally. Some markets you are, but I think you're seeing a tentativeness, a pause, a holding right now. And I'm trying to figure it out with our home builder friends out there and realtors and what people are seeing. But you see it, your community. Just look on Zillow or Realtor or any of the real estate sites. You'll see the for sale signs. Just look and see if a house has been on the market 40, 50 days that should have sold by now, that maybe things have been overpriced for quite some time here. We've had a very expensive, unaffordable housing market. We've had a very unaffordable housing market. Median home prices in New Hampshire, much higher than parts of the country. And a lot of people can't afford. I just did that study. It wasn't Wallet Hub, but I think it was Visual Capitalist was the source. They did a study of people that what you need to gross a year in income if you're a couple to buy a median home price in New Hampshire. It was one of the higher per capita states. So the point is, things have been expensive. But things seem to me for the end of May going into June, it seems to me that things are sitting, even if they're overpriced, they're sitting. And I just think some of these homes, you would have seen some activity or a sale pending sign. I just haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of it. I've seen price drops. I've seen some homes. And by the way, we're talking hotter markets here. I'm talking Dover, Durham, Newmarket, Portsmouth. You could go Lakes region. I think things are even slow. Lakes region has been one of the hottest real estate markets per capita in the state. People don't know that. Guilford, Meredith, booming. Wolfboro. They've been booming up there for a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Now things I think are sort of pausing and sitting a little bit. I'm talking the stuff that's, on the low, when I say lower end, I can't believe I'm saying lower end is 700 or 800 up to $1.5 million. I'm not talking $2 or $3 or $4 million homes. I'm talking homes that someone would have stretched maybe and borrowed 300 or 400 grand to buy. And right now, the cost of everything, I think people are pausing. So we're trying to figure out, if that's the case, and we'll have some of our economic experts coming up. Also coming up 10 o'clock hour this morning here. Good morning, New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H. You're going to introduce you to a person who's concerned about all the online gaming and gambling that is going on, and younger people kind of getting hooked in their teenage years. All the fantasy, you get the football, you get sports, you get betting, and it's just sort of like overwhelming right now in that thing we call the smartphone. And there's a campaign, an effort to raise education and awareness on this. So we'll be hearing from a guest in the 10 o'clock hour. Real quick note on energy and oil and gas. I just have to say, because this is the kind of stuff that catches my eye, and I noticed that it's more in Massachusetts, thank goodness. So I grew up, well, many of you who listen to the show know that I never did grow up, nor do I want to grow up, but technically I aged and grew up north of Boston. My family, I started growing up for some of my years in Marblehead, Mass, and then grade school moved over to Swampscott, Massachusetts, next door, neighboring town. So in that Swampscott, Marblehead's, the North Shore, Salem, if you know the area down in Mass. So I still have buddies down there, and they'll send me some news bits once in a while. So one of the ones that caught my eye this Memorial Day weekend was out of Marblehead, Massachusetts, and the town Facebook social media page for Marblehead, Massachusetts was a little bit about Memorial Day, but more about reminding residents, you ready for this? Reminding residents that the ban on gas-powered leaf blowers was in effect from Memorial Day this past weekend through Labor Day in Marblehead. Okay, so gas-powered leaf blowers. So me, kind of the commonsensical wise guy in the classroom, I just looked up, I'm just curious, how much gas does a leaf blower take? And I get news for you, it's like 0.43% of a gallon. So less than a gallon, probably, a little more than a third of a gallon of gas for a leaf blower. They want you to use the electric, the battery leaf blowers in Marblehead, no more gas leaf blower. I don't know about weed eaters or lawnmowers. They're probably in the target crosshairs of the selectmen next. So anyway, no gas-powered leaf blowers in Marblehead. And then I started thinking, okay, so Marblehead has become more versus when I grew up. It was pretty blue collar, working families, carpenters, lobstermen. Yeah, there were a few pilots and doctors that lived in Marblehead that worked in Boston hospitals, but it was a real hard working town. Today, I think it's become a little more affluent, a little more expensive. I'm sure there's plenty of Audis and big SUVs and Volvos driving around. They probably take 14 gallons to fill up. I don't know about emissions on those. I guess the emissions on a car are not a problem, but those gas-powered leaf blowers, they're big on emissions violations. So they're outlawed in Marblehead and Lexington and some other Mass communities. No more gas-powered leaf blowers. So you can fill up your car, obviously, in Marblehead to drive around. But then I realized, it's kind of funny. If you know anything about Marblehead, they have a really big, beautiful harbor, Marblehead Harbor, like a big horseshoe harbor and the lighthouse. It's just a beautiful harbor. A lot of boats in Marblehead Harbor. I used to have a whaler or two myself growing up. A lot of boats in Marblehead Harbor. I get news for you. They're not all sailboats. And even the sailboats have engines, the big ones. There's a lot of 2 or 3 outboard engines on some of these nicer boats, maybe a 250, 300 horsepower lined up in the back for a 30-foot, say, or 28-foot whaler Conquest or a Robalo or any of these boats. When they pull up to the gas dock and they fill up, some of these boats have 120, 150 gallon, 200 gallon tanks. I wonder, so the lobsterman comes in Marblehead, they're probably going off diesel. So they fill up and they go out and they get their lobster traps and they come in and they fill up, or these big boats fill up, and then they go home and they can't use a gas-powered leaf blower in Marblehead. And I'm just looking at this going, what is the mindset here? What is the mindset to ban leaf blowers? I mean, you're going to limit outboard engines in Marblehead Harbor. You can only fill it up a quarter of a tank because of less emissions. You're going to start saying lawnmowers in Marblehead you can't use if it's a gas-powered lawnmower. Cars you can only fill up. What? Gas-powered leaf blowers? Is there something about leaf blowers that I don't know that they're emitting more to the environment than like a lawnmower or a boat engine? Maybe. All right, just some commentary at Marblehead, Massachusetts expense. And you notice I went through that whole sort of dissing on Marblehead and Massachusetts without mentioning the word taxes. Amazing. Some commentary, 603-228-2080. Hey, Alexa, hey, Google, play the Pulse of an H on deck. Coming up, some of our contributors, Doug Tangden, and a whole lot more in a few minutes.
107.7. Studios. Now back to Jack Heath on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
All right, our poll question up on X at the Pulse of an H has to do with the World Cup matches coming up. There are 7, I guess, matches. I guess J-Dog will correct us, but games, if you will, but matches, soccer matches, starting, I think it's second week of June through July 9th, staggered. So Gillette's one of the cities. Our poll question, or stadiums that in the country that's hosting the FIFA World Cup. Our poll question up on X at the Pulse of an H. Do you plan to go to any of the games? I just went through some numbers earlier, and they wonder why the sales, by the way, are lackluster. That's the official, if you go online, lackluster, and they're sagging, or they're not selling a lot of seats. I don't know how many they've sold, but they're not blowing out the ticket sales. and I went through the numbers earlier. Like I looked at the second game. I don't know why it caught my attention. Norway and Iraq, second match, Foxborough. By the way, Boston Stadium, because they're naming them all, this biggest city. So this is people watching think it's Boston, downtown
Dallas
Boston.
Stadium, even though, as you know, the Cowboys play in Arlington.
How far, by the way, I'm just curious, roughly Arlington from what they say, Dallas?
Yeah, I don't know what the mileage is. It's got to be pretty much the same thing, the Boston.
Yeah, it's like 30.
Foxborough.
It's like 30 miles.
Although they say Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Yeah.
Arlington
which is
in
huge.
that
Yeah.
Vanguard.
Yeah, but I think it's like 30 miles from
Probably.
Boston. So I went through the numbers, the seating, $600 to $1,000. The up high seats maybe $500, but the premium seats where you can actually see the player, a number, and the ball are $1,000 per. $175 to park. Probably give me a minute. $150 for a couple of hot dogs and a cold beers for you and your buddy. That's right. I said $150, but it's like that at Fenway. But the point is, it's World Cup. You want to get a jersey, an official jersey to say you were there, about $125 to $150. You want to get a game jersey, $400. Parking. You want to get to the game, you probably got to park. There's not a ton of public transportation to Foxborough. $175 per vehicle. I said, that's right, $175, not $40, not $60. Old school. I know you're used to that. Go to a game, $50-$60. Pay the gas station attendant. Nope. $175. Hotels are jacking up their rates in the area from $650 a night to $1,000 per room. So you can spend about $5,000 if you get some premium seats for a couple people to go to a game, a match, about $5,000. How's that working for you? Not like, and J-Dog is right. You see these games like, by the way, I watched some of the Canadians Hurricane Carolina last night.
No.
Up in Montreal, right? And I imagine those seats are going for, it's like if the Bruins were in the playoffs, TD Garden, they're probably going to be $300 to $400 for a playoff seat
or more.
Yeah. You're not going to these games cheaply anymore.
Nope.
So are people going? Because the viewing is now incredible. Let's face it.
The streaming is breaking records, and you're going to see that with the FIFA World Cup. The interest will be there. I just don't think it's going to be in the stadium. They're going to do this best thing, have it streamed on, I believe, Fox One, and then the FS1 platforms and the like, Fox and the platforms, because they've had the coverage of the World Cup since, I want to say, 2018 for the men. So the interest will definitely be there. Social media, of course, interest will go through the roof there. And I think they're banking on that if they can't get the attendance. So
But it's going to be awkward. You see
it
these,
is going to be awkward.
68,000, 68,000 sold out for a Patriots game. If they get 20,000 people in there,
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty obvious. What are you going to put blankets on the upper level? Cover it with
They just won't
tarps?
acknowledge it, or you know what they could do? This is my fear, is that they're going to try to use AI to make it look like a total sellout.
Could be, J-Dog. You never know. You
Yeah.
never know. All right. We'll keep you posted. Trying to figure out, we're going to have a little extra time for Doug Tengden this morning. We're going to also hear from, I'll tell you in a minute here, J-Dog. Interesting interview. We're keeping an eye on some of the other news that the State House is sort of wrapping up. They're getting ready to wrap up their legislative sessions. So at some point, we'll be hearing from Anna Brown, and she'll be checking in as we get going. And we're going to talk a little bit in the 10 o'clock hour. There's a council for responsible gambling that's coming up. And that's because of all the online stuff now. The younger people are getting hooked, and there's a concern about education and public awareness. So we'll be hearing from those folks. Rory O'Neill, update you on some of the latest out of the Middle East. And if we're getting any closer to an agreement to end this thing, even though the U.S., I love this, self-defense strikes against the Iranian, the mine, their boats, their missile launch sites along the Strait of Hormuz. So self-defense strikes the U.S. took like yesterday, and yet Marco Rubio, I think, is in Secretary of State, I believe, is in India, commenting that we're making progress on an overall agreement, long-term agreement to end this thing, trying to get other Arabic Gulf states involved and verifying that the Islamic State will not enrich or use uranium or nuclear ambitions, and who knows where this goes, and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But how long is this going to take? It's taking a lot longer than I had hoped and that I had thought. So we'll keep you posted. Hey, Alexa, Google play the Pulse of an H. We're going to take a quick break, so we have time for Doug right after this.
This is the Pulse of NH Daily Poll on X, brought to you by R&D Paving. Good morning, New Hampshire, live from the New England College Studios. Now, back to Jack on the Pulse of New Hampshire.
Well, I was talking earlier about the economy. Good timing and a segue to Doug Tengden, one of our great partners and sponsors, World Market Advisors. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Jack.
Hope you had a good, longer weekend in the Upper Valley, and beautiful weather out there today. I know you wish it was yesterday or Saturday's weather, or Monday, yesterday, but Memorial Day. But good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it was great in the afternoon. The rain cleared up, and I'll tell you, it was in the afternoon. Monday afternoon was great for putting in the garden because everything was nice and moist.
There you go. Always an optimist. So, Doug, let me play along here and then tell us what you think. Did I hear this morning that markets are up?
They are up, and they are up dramatically. Yes.
Why?
The AI story continues to be a decent narrative. The fact is that companies are putting in more and more AI resources to increase their productivity and increase their margins. And we are looking at margin increases like we saw in the late 90s. It
Okay.
is that
So-
level of economic reality.
So the markets, the only thing that makes me a little nervous, we're relying on the AI boom and the investment, and that's what our friends at Bank of America echoed. So I'm not disagreeing with you. We're relying on the AI transformational money behind AI, artificial intelligence, to prop up this economy when everything else that I'm seeing lackluster real estate right now, sales locally. People have just paused and frozen. I don't see interest rates coming down anytime soon. I know that if a couple goes out for dinner, I keep saying this, happened to me over the weekend, it's closer to $200 now for two people than $100. And I'm looking at the cost of everything. I was just talking about the World Cup soccer matches at Gillette, and they aren't selling many tickets. Well, maybe because the down low seats are $1,000 per seat. Parking's $175. Hotel rooms up to $1,000 for the night. Things are expensive, and I'm just wondering, where's all the money coming from, Doug?
The money's coming from incomes, Jack. People are earning the money, and if they're not earning the money one way, they're earning it another way. These things take time to percolate through the economy. You know, I was out. I mentioned that I was in my garden, and yeah, you could say I'm an optimist because I garden. You know, I started working on my garden in February when I was planning, and yeah, I figured that even though
Doug, you and I, hold on, you're a
20
planner.
below-
Hold on, you know most people do not plan in this
Well,
economy. They live month to month, 2 weeks to 2 weeks. Not like you, but most people. Go ahead.
Hear me out, though. Hear me out. Even though it's 20 below, we knew that the sun was going to come out and it was going to be spring. I started my seeds in March. I put them out in April to harden them off, and I planted them. Now they're little. I don't expect anything from them next week. I expect that there will be a harvest in September, and it's the same way with the chips and the invest that's happening with AI. This takes a while to percolate through the economy, but it is affecting people's incomes today. And so you mentioned World Cup tickets. I heard this morning about tickets for the New York Knicks. The tickets for the Knicks versus anybody are going for not 5,000, not 10,000. They're going for a couple $100,000 for the courtside seats for the Knicks in the playoffs because they're crushing everyone, and someone's coming up with that money.
Yeah. I just laugh. It's just funny to me. I mean, I'm just looking at this going, even in your neck of the woods, I see a lot of homes, even in Hanover, New Hampshire. And of course, it's a great real estate market. A lot of price cuts, price cut here on, Gile Drive. There's a home for 600, but most of the homes are in the 2 to 3 million range. I'm seeing a lot on the market, and they've been on the market for a while. So I'm just wondering, at what point does it concern you if the local real estate sags?
It concerns me if the time on the market goes above the interim. So the real estate, really, you have to look at it not in terms of price, but you have to look at it in terms of activity. That if houses are lingering on the market for longer than you would expect, then yeah, that would concern me. But price cuts right after Memorial Day, that's a normal Monday. That's a normal Tuesday. That's what people do. They put it on the market at a certain price, and then they cut it after Memorial Day to drive the traffic.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where it all goes. All right. What else? The fuel prices. Now, it is interesting that it doesn't matter because I don't like to go back. It's like saying if the team was bad 5 years ago, makes you feel better today if they're not in the playoffs. But, in June of 2022, gas prices were $5 a gallon because of the war in Ukraine. But my point is, these higher fuel costs here, at what point does this start to concern you, or does it not?
Well, it concerns me because they're hanging out here and they don't seem to be able to open the straits. And I was listening this morning to Admiral Stavridis, who says he's sailed the strait over 100 times. And he just came out with a new book called 2084. If you're interested in sort of speculative fiction, it's really, really interesting. The fact that the strait can be closed by somebody with a Boston whaler and an RPG is concerning. And it has to be concerning because it seems so easy to close the straits. And so, yeah, that will feed through. On the other hand, higher gas prices, since the Fed isn't monetizing it, they're slowing their bond purchases. It's much less likely to feed into the larger inflation. And in fact, higher bond prices are proving to be disinflationary because we're spending less on other things.
So you're not overall, big investment in AI, big opportunity. So the markets are up. People invested in their 401ks or their mutual funds. That might be a good thing. So it's sort of driving the investment side of a lot of our big companies on AI and all the people using it to be efficient and automate. Overall cost, what's inflation running at now? Closer to 4% than 3.5%?
The headline inflation is running 3.5%, and yeah, it's going to hit 4% with oil prices. But the core inflation is running at 2.5% and has been at 2.5% for a while. And that does not concern me when inflation is running at a 2.5%.
See, and again, I love you like a brother, and I love your intellect. No, I mean this. You're one of the few people I know who's had some of that high octane tea in Turkey years ago. But my point, Doug, is I look at economies without your degrees of education and experience, and it's more of the media guy and the back. And I remember ups and downs and warning signs, and I tend to look around me. I tend to look at people in my life. I tend to look at spending, kind of my own survey, like people I know, people, builders, remodelers, home repair people, real estate agents, lenders, restaurant owners, big ones, restaurant owners. And I'm looking around and I still see this resiliency thing that you and people at our friends at Bank of America talk about. Resilient economy, spending is still there. But when I start to see homes that should be under agreement in the last 3 or 4 years would have been this time of year going into June in the area, especially on the coast, that are not, they're overpriced, but they're not like some of these have come down, quite a bit. And no one's leaping. No one, I don't see pending. I've been looking at I have like 6 or 7 barometer just as a hobbyist where I'll look and say, okay, this place in Dover, this place in Newmarket has a dock on the water. It's come down 3 times. There should be someone who's leaping for this. This place in Portsmouth, this place in Brentwood, this place in Exeter, this place in Bedford. And I'm going, okay, everything's expensive, but these homes are sitting now 45, 56 days on the market, and there should have been something going on. They've had 3 price. That concerns me. The other thing that is, you mentioned income. I said, where's the money coming from? I don't know if people's income is keeping up with the cost of things. I question that sometimes. I wonder if people are maxing out their credit cards. I'm just looking at this going, I see some warning signs. And the biggest one that's causing me to have warning signs is the uncertainty globally because of the war in Iran. And I want this wrapped up sooner than later. Our intel, and I'm a big supporter of our military and our intel, but they don't set policy. They should have known that boats as small as the Boston Whaler could fire rocket, shoulder type missiles at a tanker. We should have known this. So I don't know what we've gotten into. I'm trying to figure out how do we get out of this and achieve our goals. But it's going a lot longer than I thought. And I'm just looking at some things dragging down the boat of this American economy. But again, you come on and say things are booming and busy and markets are up. So it is kind of a perplexing thing for me to figure out.
Yeah, we have a market that's up, but it's not up on sentiment. It's actually up on earnings. The multiple of the market has actually gone down over the last year because the earnings have outpaced expectations. And I haven't seen that kind of earnings growth since the mid 80s, since the mid to late 80s. Now that did not end well, but it didn't end well because we had a Fed that was busy monetizing the spending. We had a thing called Y2K at the time.
I got one for you. We got a minute. Doug Tangden, worldmarketadvisors.com. So the other barometer I've always looked at in the past, because I remember years ago when unemployment was rising, and that's not the case right now. I mean, New Hampshire, we're pretty low still, I think. But I'd always say to someone who's living in New Hampshire, remote work, high-tech workers, okay, like an Amazon type person or Apple, and someone's making upwards of $200,000 per year, which is a pretty good income. And then all of a sudden they lose their job, maybe because of AI. They've lost their job. And I actually know a person who's in this category, high-tech sales. So you lose a job, you're making almost 200 a year gross income. That's just one person. You lose your job. Where can you go right now to make half that?
That's a good question, Jack. And I would say the short answer is there's lots of areas in the economy that are growing. Most significantly, healthcare is growing dramatically.
Mhm.
Everyone is growing in tech, particularly in cybersecurity. That's a huge
Okay.
area.
Yeah. Well, I got one.
Go ahead.
But this one, there's a younger woman I know, and professional age, not too old at all in this economy. Like, the older males are getting, people won't say it, age discrimination. She was working for a company out of the West Coast, FINRA. She was an account manager for a financial service firm. And she wants to make between 175 and 200 a year. She lives in the seacoast of New Hampshire right now. She's going on her third month right now. Can't find a job.
I don't know specifics, so I can't speak.
No, I know. I'm just saying. I'm seeing.
I do know the financial area is going to see dramatic changes due to AI.
See, you just have optimism. When you live in the Upper Valley in a garden, you have optimism. Thank you, Doug. All right. Coming back, Good Morning New Hampshire, the Pulse of an H on a beautiful Tuesday, abundant sunshine, temps in the 80s. Enjoy it. Back in a moment.
Energy. The energy you